Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer. Hey, it's me. Missed you guys. Last episode, it's me, Mark. Joining me today, we also got Christian. Yo.
What up, guys? I missed everyone too. I feel like I've been away for a while.
Yeah, we're gonna make a flesh hoodie out of the host at the end of all these episodes. So, it takes the time to replace people. But you go around through the ranks and it's back to us now, the flaying.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Yeah. And we also got Jordan today. Yo.
Howdy.
What beverage of choice would you want to be poured on your recently flayed body part?
Probably the one I'm drinking right now, which is an Irish whiskey. Has a good sting to it. We got
Good stink to it.
Yeah, it's a 90 proof, so it's got a bit of fire to it, but it's good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Nice. Cool. Yeah, we're doing a Night Lords episode. I missed the last one. I had a sick little baby, but it's all good. She's better. Just a little fever and she wanted to be held. So I didn't get to talk about the death of Konrad Curze and all that, but you guys got treated to it. It was a fun episode. Those boys did a great job with it. Some other housekeeping we got here. Come join the Patreon.
Yeah, and you can join the Imperial Tide and support the show. Get ad-free version of the show for only $2.50 a month, and the video version for $5. And we won't flay you. I think that's a pretty good incentive. So
Yes, one-time deal.
Yeah, and if you are a member of the Patreon, you also get access to the live stream. We have a chat going on during the show, and you'll hear us intermittently include a comment from the chat room, from the chat boys. And we have one right now. Grimalda says, "What's good, boys?" Not much, man. Not much.
everything is bad.
I was just told that I was going to be flayed, so
Hypothetically.
Roll with the punches, Jordan. Learn to look the bright side of things.
Yeah.
True.
You'll be drunk when it happens. It'll be fine.
Yeah, true. We also have call-in guests at the end of the show. Again, if you're a Patreon, you can be a call-in guest at the end of the show, and that's always fun.
Cool. And the final thing is some more Liber Malleus stuff. We've been doing a kind of silent auction from May 13th to the 19th, and we are auctioning off 1 Chaos Champion for the Liber Malleus and 3 Chaos Chosen for the Liber Malleus, the Chaos side of it all. So those are pretty cool. You can just email me, get a hold of me on Discord. We'll get you through the process. There's links in the podcast description below. But if you want to be the coveted champion and conspire with Lord Christian and Lord Sakor, you can write some backstory for your character and all that. I've got some people buying in and already submitting backstories, and they're pretty fun. The other quick thought I had about that has escaped my mind. But definitely you can go already join and buy veteran models for the Liber Malleus, either loyalist or trader, and get involved and support the show. And also, support me and my plastic crack addiction for once. Please.
Begging you.
I've been fanging for plastic Warhammer for so long, and I've just been sniffing pop bottles and stuff, and it's not been good. I need the real thing. It's been too long. So definitely support me in growing the ranks of the Liber Malleus.
It's exciting. All right. This episode, we are going to go through the Night Lords, but the 30K Legion era. So as per usual, we're going to go a little bit of history, cover their origins, Great Crusade, Horus Heresy, and Scouring, kind of talk about what they look like, what they believe in, what their gene seed looks and smells like and tastes like, probably, their homeworld, combat doctrines, martial traditions, organization, and war gear. So pretty typical as all the Legion episodes we've been doing so far. Yeah.
My wife keeps talking about gene seed, and she's like, so it's semen, right? I'm like, no, babe, it's not semen. And now hearing you talk about how it tastes...
I didn't imply anything with the way it tastes. I will have you know. That's where you're.
I know
think
what you're
more about you than anything.
I mean, semen, if you just take the literal words, gene seed, semen is gene seed. No?
Well, that's not how I acquire my gene seed from my fallen men, Jordan. I'll have you know.
I know there's a technical definition of gene seed that exists inside the Warhammer 40K, but from someone who's not, I can. You're not wrong. It is a genes.
Listen. I didn't want to hear it from her, and I don't want to hear it from you. Okay.
Okay, well,
I'm not afraid to
screw-
hit you. You're just lucky you're out of reach.
Well, screw you. We're gonna do an overview of the Night Lords in the 30K era. Okay, the Night Lords were once the 8th Legion of the Emperor's Chosen, forged in the fires of the Great Crusade. In the abyssal shadow of the Horus Heresy, they turned their blades against the Imperium, becoming one of the 9 damned traitor legions cast into infamy in the 31st millennium. They offer no worship to the fickle pantheon of dark gods, yet serve them all beneath the banner of chaos undivided. Their devotion lies not in prayer, but in agony and dread, visited upon the innocent and damned alike, as they spread fear like a plague across the stars. Terror is their doctrine, cruelty their sacrament. The Night Lords descend without warning, cloaked in darkness, delivering slaughter with cold efficiency. Mercy is foreign to them. They revel in despair, their war an orgy of pain and desecration. But once, long ago, their violence had a purpose. 10,000 years before their Primarch, Konrad Curze, sought justice through torment, born of the lawless horror that shaped him. Yet in time he was broken, his visions unheeded, his will shattered. When he embraced chaos, his noble cause decayed into madness, leaving only nightmares in his son's wake. Since the cursed age of the Horus Heresy, Imperial scholars have wrestled with the great sorrow. How could the purest loyalty of the Legiones Astartes rot trail their sacred duty into hate? Yet, for the Night Lords, perhaps there was never light in their hearts to lose. Born for a higher cause, they might have stood as saviors, but their legacy is a dirge of warped doctrine and relentless cruelty. Even during their short years of loyalty, unease followed them like a shadow. Some whispered they were a necessary evil, beasts unleashed to tame a savage galaxy. Others spoke more gravely, fearing they were a flaw in the Emperor's vision, an error born of desperation and left to fester. There are those who believe they were cursed from the outset, doomed to remain outsiders to the very order they fought to establish. In the end, all such lamentations fall to silence. Whatever the truth, the Night Lords are harbingers of terror, and perhaps always were.
Yeah, they kind of just are like the bad guys of bad guys. They even from the get-go, they were going around smashing things, wrecking places. They'd go in and just terrorize populations. And they might have had a purpose to some degrees. Maybe you need that kind of enforcer every now and again to snap a population in line, where you go in and you really let them know, like, if you do this again, we're gonna really brutalize you. Maybe you need that. But yeah, it just from the get-go, everyone was like, that's a step fucking far that the Night Lords go to.
Yeah, they're interesting. They're one of the first ones that, like, if there was no Horus Heresy, definitely at some point there would probably have been a Night Lord's purge at some point in the future. Like,
Yeah.
A Night Lord's heresy, a Konrad Curze heresy.
The Curzean heresy, yeah.
Curzean heresy, yeah.
Yeah,
You're right. Like, because even before the Horus Heresy, him and Dorn come to blows over some stuff, and he just
unstable, unpredictable.
So we'll get into the origins of the 8th Legion. The 8th Legion was born in blood and sorrow. Its first sons were taken from the cavernous prison sinks beneath ancient Terra, warrens of ash-choked ruin where the forgotten lived and died in silence. These were condemned, cast into darkness for crimes both real and imagined, buried alive in the tombs where daylight had long since been forgotten. I'm starting to imagine the pit from the Batman or whatever, that prison pit where no light reaches, no laws governed. Yeah.
I was born in the darkness, molded
Bane
by
would make
it.
a great Night Lord, actually.
You merely adopted the darkness.
He would, man. He would. He goes around just terrorizing people for the sake of it. No laws governed that abyss. Life clung by the blade's edge, and death was a quiet, constant companion. Only the cruel and cunning and the utterly unyielding endured. Fed by the endless refuse of Terran hive cities, the prison sinks became a breeding ground for madness, an unlit gateway to violence and despair. Among the damned moved Thraktar Hex, a warrior of the Night Lords whose very malice seemed to dim around the air around him, his armor drenched in the Legion's cold heraldry. Yet not all who bled in the dark willingly were guilty. From the mire the children emerged, born to screams and silence, nursed on fear, and taught to vanish like ghosts. Pale as corpses, they learned to kill before they could speak. Even the hardest killers shunned them, whispering of the night children, with unease in their breath. From the haunted progeny, the Emperor raised the 8th Legion. Their flesh was the color of ash, their voices few, their eyes reflecting eternal night. The gene seed of their lost Primarch seemed crafted for them, marrying perfectly with their shadow-born frames. They could pierce darkness as others might see daylight. Yet this gift came cruelly barbed, for they saw the world above only through pain and filtered glare. Even when wreathed in starlight, the sons of the 8th walked forever in the dark. Okay, so, oh man, if you heard me do these Primarch episodes and Legion episodes, you've heard this gripe before about, like, what came first, the chicken and the egg. Like, this planet, where they recruited from, is, like, the most bang on to Nostramo, their home world, their recruiting world.
Yeah. Again, that whole question of, what is it, the gene seed that leads to it, like nature nurture argument. Obviously both. Obviously a little heavy-handed on the author's part of like, well, they were always destined to be this way.
Yeah. Well, I kind of have come to the rationalization of this, to deal with this madness, because otherwise I'm good for the next 10 episodes of them. I'll just say this every time. We all know the Emperor had foresight. So maybe when drafting him, maybe he always was like, okay, where roughly are they going to land? Possibly. He might know roughly. And maybe he got just like the Emperor might not have known exactly where the Emperor's landed in the galaxy, but maybe he got a flash of Konrad Curze on a prison planet. It's like, okay, well, let's recruit from this prison over here. Give him what he wants,
Let him work with what he already knows.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the only way I've come to rationalize it, is once the Emperor kind of knows everything.
The Emperor works in mysterious ways. All right, let's get into the Unification War. The first purpose the Emperor gave to his 8th Legion was to scour away those who dared believe that the sins of Old Night could still breathe in the new Imperium. Many who bent the knee had done so not in faith, but in fear. Others, hardened by centuries of warlord rule and collapse, mistook the Emperor for just another fleeting tyrant in a galaxy without permanence. Treason against unity wore many faces. The Saragorn Enclave still whispered its gene-flesh heresies in hidden vaults. The court of Antius bred psychers in violation of every natural law, and the march of 10 million dragged chained men across the stars in ancient cruelty. These were not simple crimes. They were echoes of a nightmare the Imperium sought to silence. And when annihilation was not enough, when retribution was needed to cauterize the wound, the Emperor unleashed the 8th Legion. It was a task they fulfilled with terrible clarity. Whether shaped by the pit-born cruelty of their youth or the cold rigor of indoctrination, the 8th saw the galaxy through a mirror of absolutes. They were not confused by nuance. To them, guilt was a shadow and innocence a fleeting light soon to be extinguished. I'm just going to interrupt myself there for a sec. It's interesting that there were still echoes of Old Night, in that there were still people practicing or doing things. Like, Old Night was a horrific time. You had if you listen back to our old Terra episodes, you have a taste for like the capabilities of what some of these warlords were able to do, right? Everything from gene crafting their own monsters to uncontrolled psychers and all kinds of cruelty. So there's still elements of that, and the Night Lords are there to stamp out those echoes.
Cool.
Another interesting thing too is this idea of like seeing things in such black and white terms. I obviously I wasn't there for the Konrad Curze episodes, but I'm sure someone brought up the Batman comparisons.
Yeah.
As they do, which he is. However, another interesting hero who kind of follows that morality is Rorschach from Watchmen. Has a very strict moral code, a very black and white, absolutist worldview, which I'm not opposed to, but certainly this shows like the extremism of it, right? Like, no, if you're guilty, you're guilty, and you know you need to be punished, which is obviously
and like horrifically punished. It's like
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you stole bread or murdered your wife, horrifically punished.
yeah, it's the same. It's all the same. And even in the stealing bread, even if you have a moral justification, like, oh, you know, my family's starving, blah blah, it doesn't matter. What you did was wrong. So yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Purge in the chat says, I prefer the Batman that laughs for comparison. Yeah, a couple people are saying similar things for sure.
There was no mercy in the creed. The dark was not misunderstood. It was wicked, knowing and beyond redemption. The only justice it deserved was swift and surgical, a message carved in bone. Their judgment did not heal, it erased. Theirs was a justice colder than vacuum, sharper than broken glass. These warriors of the Eighth fought to build a future in which they could never belong. They were the weapons of a dream that had no place for them once fulfilled, or so it is said by those who survived them. Perhaps memory has softened their terror, woven nobility from nightmare. Perhaps it is easier to believe that there was meaning in their butchery, because if there was none, then what does that say of the Imperium that forged them? Yeah, again, early on you can see like people trying to justify what the Night Lords are capable of. You know, to be fair, some of the other legions did have some pretty heavy flaws, like the original Blood Angels were pretty flawed too. But just pointing that out. I don't have a point.
A little more these guys. A little different for sure. I kind of picture like what kind of person would become an executioner, you know, a couple hundred years ago that just loves lopping heads off, you know. Whoever that guy is a prime candidate for Night Lord like recruitment nowadays. Just like some people just enjoy the sick thrill of that side of justice, the pain side, the punishment, and they're happy to deal it out.
To be fair, that is an interesting observation because the Night Lords recruit from the criminals who would typically be under the headsman's axe. So it's almost like it's an inversion of it, right? Like where they become the justice dealers are the ones that were being I guess incarcerated or whatever for their own crimes.
Yeah. Well, like the Legion wasn't, from what I was kind of reading, you know, and maybe this was kind of our interpretation from knowing the lore from so long ago as opposed to when the Horus Heresy books were coming out. It more read like going through it. The Night Lords weren't recruiting criminals. Like Cruz kind of got the place going again, and then, you know, the population he was still recruiting from. And then he kind of had this incident with Dorn where he kind of was got in a little fight. Then the Horus Heresy happens, and then kind of the criminal aspect fits in a lot more. Yeah. So then he lets his planet go, you know. That's kind of the way I was getting it. So it wasn't necessarily like always the case, but did happen.
Yeah, and like I guess we should say too, like their initial recruits were from like the prisons of Terra, right? So like it doesn't mean they were always and only limited to that case. Right?
But I just think about like, you know, the Great Crusade's 200 years, and the Horus Heresy was, I always forget if it was 7 or 11, but you know, if we're talking about how long do you really have to do something to be known for it, you know?
Just once if it's the right thing or the wrong.
Oh yeah, you fuck one goat. That's all it takes. Yeah. All right, let's jump to them in the Great Crusade. During the Great Crusade, the Night Lords served as one of the Emperor's 20 Primarch legions, tasked with reclaiming the scattered human worlds and uniting the galaxy under the Imperium. Under the Primarch Konrad Curze, they operated as ruthless shock troops who specialized in terror warfare, striking fear into the hearts of enemies with brutal and psychological tactics rather than straightforward battlefield might. Unlike many other legions, they sought glory in open combat. The Night Lords excelled in covert operations, assassinations, and instilling terror to break enemy morale. Their methods were grim and uncompromising. They employed night raids, mass executions, and terror tactics to subdue populations and force enemy forces quickly and efficiently. This earned them a fearsome reputation, not only among their foes, but sometimes even among Imperial allies. Yeah, I just kind of picture like a planet goes to sleep, and then when they wake up, all their like lords and nobles have been murdered and strung up across the planet, and you kind of just Ave Dominus Nox is written everywhere, and you know eventually you find out, yeah, you're gonna submit, otherwise we'll just keep going down the hierarchy, you know, until we reach everyone. Konrad Curze's visions of darkness and humanity shaped the Legion's brutal approach. believing that fear was the only true way to impose order on a chaotic galaxy. During the Great Crusade, the Night Lords operated primarily in the eastern fringe of the galaxy, cleansing worlds deemed too rebellious or dangerous to be ruled through conventional means. Despite their effectiveness, the Legion's method and growing ruthlessness all alienated other Imperial forces and sowed unease among the Emperor's commanders. Their brutality foreshadowed the tragic fall that waited them during the Horus Heresy, as the seeds of terror and madness took root deep into the Legion's soul.
Yeah. Purge in the chat was saying, arguably Big E could have taken them from anywhere, yet he chose people who have no moral compass. So again, I think that goes back to, like, is it that they have no moral compass, or is their moral compass so unforgiving that, like, to you it seems like a horrific act, but to them it's some form of twisted justice? Are they too morally strict, let's say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when we all say morals, we all think of a different. We could all three of us, even though we were all raised like in the exact same spot, went to same school, we all have a different version of morals, even among ourselves. So, like, yeah, that's not quite the right word to use. I think of like good and evil if they're,
Yeah.
like if they're inflicting evil acts, it's not necessarily like, yeah, they're doing it morally to them, but it is horrific to everyone else around them still.
Yeah, exactly. It's done. C.S. Lewis has a great quote about, like, people who do things. I forget how it's worded, but like in line with their own moral compass are like the most brutal tyrants, because they are okay with what they're doing. That they don't see themselves as doing anything wrong. In fact, this is what they ought to do. They would be wrong if they didn't do this to you. So yeah, it is an interesting, like, you become so good, you become bad. It's almost like a but
Is that the moral busybodies quote?
Yeah.
Of all tyrannies, tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. Its cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. Quote C.S. Lewis.
Fun.
It's a great quote.
Yeah, so that's what it's like living under the Night Lord's rule. Those moral busybodies always going around
gutting your family members because you did something wrong.
Yeah, it's more like beware of the true believer, right? Like you'd almost rather live underneath like a cynical opportunist who at least they can be manipulated to take it easier on you. But the true believer, they're the ones who are they will go to the ends of the earth to achieve their means.
The Lupercal says, I mean, the world's going to shit right now. Maybe the Night Lords are what we need. Maybe.
I don't know if they're what we need, but they're probably what we deserve.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, and to be fair, like, I'm not making certain statements. Like, these are just observations, obviously, with how these characters and things are written. Like, I can see where they're coming from, let's say. I wouldn't go as far as them. I don't think it's justice to flay someone alive for certain punishments, but I am more strict in, like, black and white kind of moral thinking than most people, I think. But yeah, I'm just
no, it's probably good that you don't want to be flaying people too much for your kind of form of punishment and stuff.
Not too much. There's still some things that deserve a flaying.
Minor flaying. We're open to the idea, but you definitely need a judge to sign off before you start flaying people.
And that judge is a Night Lord.
Oh God. One other thing before we read this next little bit. I know these history portions always are quick. And I say this usually in the other episodes, but when we're talking about the history, go listen to the 2 episodes before this with Konrad Curze, because that's the history of the Night Lords during this period. So, we're doing a nice little summary. Lots of stuff happened, but just thought I'd mention that as well.
Yep, sure. And on that note, let's get into the Horus Heresy. Reluctant allies at Isfahan. Though the Night Lords had long since abandoned any pretense of loyalty to the Emperor, they were inexplicably summoned among the 7 legions tasked with hunting down the traitors who had shattered the Imperium's fragile unity. The sons of Horus, World Eater's Death Guard, and Emperor's children had gathered at the Isfahan system, and the Imperium's response was swift but desperate. Why the Night Lords, a legion synonymous with terror, cruelty, and rebellion, were entrusted with such a critical mission remains shrouded in mystery. Official records are sparse and contradictory, suggesting that the imperial justice system itself was overwhelmed, uncertain how to punish such rogue force without fracturing the military strength in the face of galactic civil war.
I never really thought about that until today of, hey, yeah, why the heck did they send the Night Lords? They had already kind of rebelled at this point, like...
Yeah, you're sending the unstable guy into an unstable situation doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah. But it goes into another thing. Like, I just remember reading those first Horus Heresy books, and it's like unthinkable that brothers turned upon brothers, and like 4 legions turned, and then the shock of, another 3 joining them at the end, and then another 2 eventually, and kind of fun.
Yeah. I guess I should also draw a demarcation how much I'm stressing the like over morality, let's say, of the Night Lords. That will definitely change after they turn to chaos. They will become more hollowed out. So what I'm speaking to about that like extreme morality is more so this 30k legion version of them. Some whisper that the commanders of the loyalist legions had no choice but to accept the Night Lord's presence, desperate to muster enough firepower to crush Horus's uprising before it could spread further. To many, this was a terrible gamble, placing monsters alongside heroes in a battle that would stain the stars red with blood. The Night Lords, once feared for their brutal purges and shadowed terror tactics, marched alongside the defenders of the Imperium, their grim faces carved from nightmares, their intentions dark and inscrutable. It was a tenuous alliance born from necessity and the dread that the galaxy might burn unless swift, merciless action was taken. Yeah. And in some ways, it does make sense that they would also send the Night Lords. Like, if your goal is to stop a rebellion, send the guys that flay people.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, in order to put down a rebellion or risking a war becoming larger than it needs to be, you've got to go scorched earth, like rather than half-assing it and trying to win hearts and minds. It's like you just got to go in and absolutely demoralize the opponent. And like I guess in terms of like a game theory, how you're looking at how you would defeat an opponent or a potential rebellion. It's like, do you want to go and try and make nice and not completely annihilate them, just like kill the worst of them? But that strategy sometimes doesn't always work.
Historically, though, that is rebellions have been treated like quite brutally, because you're just as much trying to send a message to any other would-be traitor. If you look at the laws written for people who commit treason, even like in the UK or and not even just modern times, like
all you Albertan separatists.
That's a separate issue. Like rebellion, the Assyrian Empire, like rebels were treated with like the utmost horrific punishments to send that clear message to anyone else that would dare try to rebel. At least within opposing like enemy nation, you can like sue for peace. You can, find an alternative to war, or if it comes to war, maybe you can throw them a boon so that, you can buy favor with them in the future. But if someone's a rebel, like they're out for blood no matter what. Like it's either they do it or they die. There's no middle ground. There's no trusting. Yeah, there's no trusting you again. You can't stop being a rebel and suddenly come into the good graces of a ruler. So the only option left for you is destruction.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of like a sort of political realist, I guess, like in that I fundamentally just believe that any like government, political body, empire, what have you, they are driven purely for survival and to continue to their expansion, which is also part of their survival. But so they are very self-interested. They're always interested in that like self-preservation, and from that model, you have to almost set aside the morality of what they're doing and just like put it into like game theory, what are they going to do to survive and expand? Because they will, at the end of the day, they will always be motivated to do that thing. And then that's how, like we as individuals have to plan for, the future. But yeah, I think like there is just sort of like, I don't know, maybe it's like utilitarian. It's like they will always do what is best for the survival of the state or the empire or what have you. So go
An
ahead.
amoral calculation. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
strict survival based calculation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think all governments and empires behave that way. They always do. They will talk a whole lot about how morally superior they are than like if you listen to one nation talk about another nation, they will lecture people about their bad human rights records or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're all interested in their territorial integrity and the preservation of their state, and in many cases the expansion of their state, which, as I said before, is sort of related to the preservation as well. But you have to like understand that that's the calculus that is being made. It doesn't make it right. I don't like it. It's not a thing I like about the world, but it is kind of, it's just the sort of the cold hard facts about how states behave. Anyway,
another good technique they use too is like if you have rebels and you have a group of people that you think eventually might become rebels, you use those rebels that might become rebels to fight the rebels. And maybe that was this case too a little bit, where it's like the emperor already didn't like the Night Lords and he was already kind of censoring them a little bit and stuff. And I just don't see any of the prominent legions at the drop site massacre kind of having to go deal with this and getting their numbers wrote down. You look at the Raven Guard, the Salamanders, Iron Hands, and a couple. You can name them all, but they're not the Blood Angels, the Space Wolves, the Ultramarines, the Dark Angels. They're not the big ones. So just another way to kind of get rid of maybe two rebels at once. Because like we were even saying in this episode, if they didn't do it, you're looking at a Curzean heresy eventually. It's only a matter of time. So
all right, let's jump into the drop site massacre. When the Night Lords arrived at Istvan 5, they did not come as saviors, but as executioners cloaked in shadow. Alongside the word bearers, Iron Warriors, and the Alpha Legion, they turned their blades on the Loyalist legions, who had landed earlier, welcoming them not with camaraderie, but with betrayal. The drop site massacre became a nightmare etched into the souls of the Raven Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamanders, whose ranks were shattered beneath the traitors' merciless assault. The Night Lords reveled in the carnage, their terror tactics leaving the survivors broken, not just in body, but in spirit. After the slaughter, the Night Lords withdrew into the eastern reaches of the galaxy, abandoning any pretense of strategy or honor. Their campaign became a spree of chaotic slaughter and unfocused genocide aimed at severing any hope of aid or reinforcements reaching Terra. They swept across the star systems, their fleets haunting the void like ghosts of vengeance, snuffing out entire worlds with brutal efficiency. This unrelenting terror was not mere warfare. It was a dark, grim message sent to the Imperium. No help would come, no salvation would arrive. The night itself had fallen across the stars.
They're finally free and unleashed and not like bound to the Imperium. Plot twist, we got you during the drop site massacre, and now they just are like rampaging through the far reach of the galaxy where no one can help. And I can just imagine those places almost feeling safe at first. They're like, we're on the outreaches, like the Horus Heresy isn't going to affect us. And then boom, Night Lords come in, destroy your planet for no fucking reason other than for just to cause terror, do harm. So up next we'll have the defeat at Thramis and the fracturing of a legion. The Night Lord's reign of terror met a grim reckoning during the Thramis Crusade, where the Dark Angels, once their kin, laid a cunning ambush. The Night Lord's fleet, fractured and stretched thin, was caught in the crushing grip of their old brothers' blades. 1/5 of the legion was slaughtered in the ensuing battle, a devastating blow that shattered their might and morale. Worse than the loss of ships was men was the fate of their Primarch, Konrad Curze. The Night Haunter was grievously wounded and cast into a comatose state after the savage duel with Lionel Johnson, his tortured mind slipping into darkness. With the Master incapacitated, leadership fell to Sevatar, a cruel and ruthless commander who shattered the Legion further, scattering its remnants into 6 separate war bands. The Night Hunters became a fractured legion of nightmares, each warband isolated and adrift, yet still bound by blood and terror. Crews marooned aboard the Dark Angel's flagship, Invincible Reason, eluded capture in a desperate gambit, slipping away to the surface of Macragge. The Night Lords' unity was broken, their future uncertain, and a ghostly echo of their once feared force, now fractured and hunted.
Yeah, Sevatar is a very interesting character. He is one of those big fan favorite ones who definitely deserves his own episode. But for a lot of his motives and things, I'll save that discussion for that time. But just flagging that character in particular, other listeners haven't heard of him.
Yeah, like he's got a cool model and stuff. Like, yeah, big character for sure.
Yeah.
This was a pretty cool part. If you want to hear more about this, go listen to the Lionel Johnson's episode. We talk more about kind of this Lionel Johnson hunting Konrad Curze and this struggle of what do you do with your brother when you do catch him. It's a pretty cool kind of thing.
Try and kill him, of course.
And sometimes you do, and sometimes you let him go free until you have to capture him again. And do I kill him this time?
The eternal question: what to do with the other siblings who are challenges to your imperial authority. Scattered war bands and power struggles. The scattered Night Lords' war bands spilled across Ultima Segmentum like a plague, leaving death and madness in their wake. Their cruelty knew no bounds, striking without warning and retreating into shadow. One notable clash was the Battle of Sotha, where warbands led by Krush and Gendor Skraviok fought to seize a Xenos artifact known as the Pharos from Imperial Secundus. The artifact's alien power only deepened the Night Lords' descent into darkness, warping their minds as they vied for dominance amid the ruins of shattered stars. Amid this chaos, the Nightfall became a crucible of bitter infighting. The Legion's fragile semblance of order shattered as Curze's former equerry, Shang, sought to rally the scattered warbands to find their lost Primarch and embrace a life of reaving and pillaging. Yet his vision was crushed violently when Gendor Skraviok slew him, proclaiming allegiance to Horus, an inevitable march upon Terra. The Legion's descent into madness was complete. Fraternal bonds dissolved, replaced by brutal rivalries and unrelenting bloodshed. Yeah, like the Night Lord's Legion just kind of falls apart and again, I think that shows like the tortured motives of all the characters within the Night Lords and that idea of that like strained morality. So like you still have those who are allowed, like you said, who are kind of unleashed after the Horus Heresy. They either give up any semblance of morality and are just like, you know what, let's just do whatever we want. Inflict terror for the sake of inflicting terror rather than for a purpose. Others, are more in line with Horus's vision. Others, are like, let's actually be free, kind of like the whole idea you have going on with Chaos Unbound. You can see those elements of tension within the Legion itself.
Yeah, like where the other legions, some of them go to specific gods, these guys do not. But I'm sure some of them still did, but it wasn't the driving force. So without like that, like you said, you just mentioned a whole bunch of different pulling directions, and they just were not able to maintain anything cohesive.
Which obviously then turns to violence and bloodshed from within.
All right, Curze's capture and imprisonment. On Macragge, the nightmarish hunt for Konrad Curze reached its crescendo. The Dark Angels, led by Lionel Johnson, and charged with protecting Reboot Guilliman's Imperial Secundus, waged a relentless campaign to capture the fallen Primarch. The Lion's wrath was unyielding. Curze was hunted like a beast and finally overwhelmed. Broken and battered, he became a prisoner not only of flesh and bone, but of his captor's will, held under his watchful eye of Lionel Johnson, Guilliman, and Sanguinius. Yet, even in chains, Curze's fate remained cruel and haunting. As the Loyalists marched To reclaim Terra, Sanguinius decided that the Night Haunter was too dangerous to be allowed to live. He was sealed within a stasis coffin and cast into the void, lost to the cold silence of deep space. Thus, the Primarch had brought terror across the stars. Thus the Primarch who had brought terror across the stars was absent from the Battle of Terra itself. Despite this, fragments of the Night Lords, led by Sevatar and Skravok, converged with Horus's forces, their twisted howls echoing in the final siege's carnage.
It's kind of crazy that this is one of the ways to deal with a Primarch. Put him in like a stasis coffin and just shoot him into space and hope to God no one finds him. Like,
Yes.
yeah. Like, well, we tried killing him. Didn't work.
This is the next best thing. I was gonna say, I hope someday someone does that to me. Fire me into space, boys. I'm done.
I got a fun comment here. It's always weird to put a face to the voice when you've only listened to the podcast. Yeah, isn't that fun? Yeah, yo. Hey, I'm Mark. It's funny. I always hear that, and I always wonder, what are you guys picturing? Like,
what is Mark's
do I
voice
come
sound
off
like?
as a black man, or yeah? Because that's the vibe I'm trying to go for. But no, I'm just some silly white guy, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, Curze is launched into space. We don't see him ever again. He misses out on the biggest battle of all time, the Siege of Terra. But the Night Lords, they are there, at least some of them. So during the siege of the Imperial Palace, the Night Lords' torment was far from over. Gendar Skravoric, drunk on ambition and bloodlust, challenged Relador, the first captain of the Blood Angels, to a desperate duel atop the palace walls. The duel was brief and brutal tragedy. Skavorock fell, broken and cast down into the abyss below. His fall shattered his body and mind alike, leaving him a hollow vessel. In his despair, a demon found refuge within his broken form, binding him in eternal torment and transforming him into a prisoner within his own flesh. Finally, a Night Lord gets turned into a flesh cape of his own. That's good. It's about time. A wretched
See how
demon
you
prince.
liked it.
Yeah, let's see how you like being stretched out and worn as a flesh hoodie. A wretched demon prince destined to haunt the Imperium's nightmares for millennia to come. In the shadow of Skavarok's downfall, a figure named Korstovok rose in nominal command. But by this time, the Night Lords had ceased to be a unified legion and had become little more than scattered killers, lost to their own savagery and madness. The bonds of brotherhood were shattered, and what remained was a legion of ghosts, devouring each other as much as their enemies. The Night Lord's tragic descent had come full circle. A once feared force, now fragmented nightmare, swallowed by the darkness it had embraced. They almost at this point go off and become their own little Konrad Curzes. Each one, maybe not each one, but maybe a handful go to a planet and just terrorize it in the night. And they don't try to conquer it. They just they just go and terrorize. Build their own myth.
Yeah, again, it's just a total breakdown. Like other Chaos Legions, even though they are part of Chaos, they still have command structures, they still have commanders and even ideals that they follow. But a good chunk of these guys are just truest renegades, which is kind of cool as a theme. You would think a faction that was called Chaos would be more like the Night Lords generally. True Chaos.
They seem, like the chaos of chaos. Yeah.
This is a fun comment.
All right.
Well, now we get into the Great Scouring.
The death of the Night Haunter. When the Siege of Terra shattered and fell, the Night Lords did not vanish into the Eye of Terror like the other traitor brethren. Instead, they lingered in the shadows of the eastern fringe, carving out a dread dominion bathed in fear and blood. But beneath their relentless assault on the Imperium, a darker rot festered, a growing madness that consumed the Legion from within. Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter, once a terror born of prophecy, was unraveling. His mind fractured by visions and nightmares, his rage twisted into cruel, senseless savagery. Those closest to him, like Jagos of Aterion, watched helplessly as the Primarch they revered became a fractured ghost of terror and despair. So desperate was the Emperor to end this curse that he unleashed the deadly assassins of the Calidus Temple, half of their number sworn to hunt the Broken Lord. At last, the silent blade of Enshen found its mark, fulfilling the grim fate Curze had long foreseen. Again, that probably would have been covered in the Night Haunter episode. I will contend that the Night Lord may or sorry, I guess I could call him the Night Lord, but Konrad Curze may in fact still be alive. I like to cling to the thought.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Cliche.
other people.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant, but I will just stress that the video capture of his alleged death
How
goes
then, Christian, would you
blurry.
explain the visions? The whole point of him is the visions of his death. If he avoids it, what was the point of his visions, Christian? Come on, man. Come
Well,
on,
you know,
man.
prophecy in 40K is I think there's better ways to do it. I'm
Yeah.
not a good enough writer to write it, but I'm sure there's a way to like subvert the vision where it still comes to pass, but in a different way.
Yeah.
You can't put it on me though, to do it.
All right, shall we get into after his death? With their master's death, the Night Lords tore themselves apart, fractured into savage war bands. Their unity shattered like brittle bones. They retreated into the malevolent embrace of the Eye of Terror. By the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, their once feared legion had dwindled, broken in number and spirit. No true leader rose from the carnage, only bitter rivals clawed for dominion, igniting bitter infighting that doomed any hope of cohesion. Now these remnants prowl the galaxy's shadows, selling the terror as mercenaries and shock troops to the highest bidder, even to pirates like Huron Blackheart, who prey upon the Imperium's fringe worlds. Still, the Night Lords answer the call of the War Master, Abaddon the Despoiler. Their thirst for vengeance against the Imperium, an eternal flame. Their most infamous strike since the Horus Heresy was the brutal assault on the Scound's Fall, a world agonizingly close to Holy Terra. Among Chaos's fell legions, nearly all raptors owe their savage origins to the broken sons of the Night Haunter.
So this legion, like just like Curze, it's a roller coaster of being together and then being broken and coming together and trying to hold on and then being broken even further until it's finally just shattered completely.
Yeah. I will air one of my many complaints. I always just liked when legions got reduced down to like a single unit, kind of like raptors. I mean, it makes sense when you know more about Chaos Raptors and like their whole thing is fear and jump packs. But presumably there are Night Lords who don't use jump packs and who follow different combat doctrines. Like, what happened to the Night Lords Tactical Marines or the Night Lords Artillery guys, right? Like, presumably those guys would still exist somewhere. So, you know, not all. I just hate when all X are Y.
Sure. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I just like a little bit of variety in there. The
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, and then I think though, like, I know what you're saying. I don't have any good real counter.
Because there isn't one.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah. I think I'm notoriously bad for doing like I'm gonna do an all X army because that's their theme.
Yeah, you double down on the theme.
Yeah, I definitely double down.
There's nothing wrong with it, you know, conceptually. Like the themes exist for a reason, but I hate when you get so married to the theme that anything else is not even thought of.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about what these guys look like. The Night Lords bear the mark of eternal shadow. Their eyes, void black, irisless pits, reflect nothing but the abyss. The pallor of their flesh speaks of lives long severed from the sun, and even their senses, honed for the silence and dark, betray origins rooted in endless gloom. Those who have endured since the Horus Heresy have not changed, they have simply become more like the night that birthed them. Long before their fall, the sons of Nostramo walked in death's image. They understood that terror was not a byproduct of war, but a weapon sharpened by cruelty. The armor etched with grim visages and ossified horrors only became more grotesque once chaos whispered its truce. Now their ceramite bears the warped blessings of the dark gods. Fanged skulls leer from breastplates, crimson eyes glow from demon-wrought helms, and leathery rings adorned corrupted back battle plate like trophies from the forgotten nightmare. Even before their fall, the Legion's nightmare armor, slashed with lightning, like wounds torn in the sky, set them apart. While others bore heraldry of honor, the Night Lords exuded dread. Some still wear the ancient Mark IV Maximus warplate, now rusted and desecrated by centuries of atrocity, as though clinging to a time that condemned them to damnation. Bone litters their war gear, harvested, desecrated, displayed. Skulls fused to helms, ribcage curled around breastplates, and femurs protrude like claws. Some grind bones of the fearful into dust, rubbing it into their pauldrons as if to absorb their victim's final terror. They believe agony clings to bone, that pain lingers, and that can be worn like armor. Yeah, some of these Night Lords are definitely sniffing bone, trying to get a boner, I think is what it's called when you do that. Rootless and broken, the Night Lords drift through the void, scavenging what they must. They tear wargear from the dead, loyalist or otherwise, and adorn it with their own colors, streaked in midnight and blood, corrupted beyond redemption. Even the machine spirits recoil, howling silently with their desecrated shells. Since their fall, their armor has become a living tome of fear. In some, the metal reshapes itself in an echo of terror and spreads. Helms sprouting horns, plates reshaping into grinning skulls. Those silhouettes are monstrous, and often the last vision that victims see before death claims them. Their livery is a tapestry of suffering. Power armor bears sigils of death, spines, and skulls, hanging like sacred relics. Yet, all across their warplate dances an unnatural lightning, crawling arcs of spectral light that slither and scream across their armite. Whether a curse or a relic of gene-wrought design, or a gift from darker powers, no one can say. But when they descend in silence, clad in shadow and seething lightning, terror precedes them. The badge of the Legion still marks them, a bleached skull, wings outstretched in a mockery of salvation, superimposed on a star of chaos, a sign not of allegiance, but of damnation. Ooh, man. Yeah, of all the Legions, they do look super fucking tight. Like that combination of, their midnight blue armor and the lightning that you can imagine is, constantly squeaking and twirling. But then also they got arms and limbs stapled to them in some type of like fun fashion statement.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely have a unique like design that is unmistakable whenever you do see them. They don't all have this, but it is also quite a signature of theirs to have the Batwing helms too. Typically they'll have, bat wings on their helmets. But that lightning is interesting. I remember, I think there was some conflict as to what causes it. I can't remember what source book I read it in, but at one point it was supposed to be like almost like a hollow projection that they build into their armor.
Oh, cool.
But I can't remember what the source was for that. It's like a vague memory I have. So again, like if it's a technological thing that they can like turn on and off, is it like a warp thing now where it just is always there magically? Is it a?
Do you have a preference?
I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like if you're trying to do stealth, which Night Lords often do, it would be kind of bad for stealth. So if you can't control it and you're just like flickering in the corner in the dark. Doesn't help.
What is over there?
I like to, again, I just like to be broad strokes with 40k, maybe all of the above. Maybe some guys use technology to make that effect. Maybe some guys just paint it on their armor statically. Other guys, it is warp lightning of some kind. Like
and you could almost lay it out over the eons of how it or like go from technology to warp, and all that.
As is often the case with chaos, especially. But yeah, definitely a unique design. Definitely one of the more recognizable legions. Like you see them, right away. It's Night Lords, which is very cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some of their beliefs. Most legions were transformed upon reuniting with their lost Primarchs, reshaped by new worlds and old blood. Yet for the 8th Legion, it was not a transformation, but a descent. Nostramo did not elevate them. Curze did not redeem them. The homeworld and the Gene Father that should have saved them instead delivered the Legion unto damnation. At first, their change was subtle, almost invisible. Yet no Legion would fall so far. The Nostraman tongue slithered into daily use, its curling runes etched onto battle plates and onto blades and battle plate, its sibilant cadence dripping with cruel sarcasm and grim fatalism. Legionaries drawn from Nostramo brought with them a humor blacker than the void, and a view of death as something both inevitable and mocking. Their laughter rang hollow, more knife than mirth. Traditions emerged, twisted echoes of the gutter rituals from Nostramo's shadows. The condemned were marked with crimson gauntlets, a stain to remind all that death had already claimed them. Officers cloaked themselves in titles of a long-rotted aristocracy, aping and pageantry of dead corpse. Yet these changes only deepened what was already there. Curze had not altered his sons, only peeled away their masks. The Eighth did not shift its methods. Their wars of terror, of sudden death and mutilation, remained unchanged. Terranborn and Nostraman merged seamlessly, forged in the same crucible of darkness and cruelty. One bloodline had been tempered in the dungeons of Old Earth, the other in the alleys of Nostramo's eternal night. Both were made for fear, both born to hurt. That is an interesting uniqueness of the Night Lords. It's often, not always, but often there is some kind of tension between Terranborn and the Primarch's homeworld. However, that conflict is resolved. Sometimes it's resolved well, other times not so much. But in this case, it didn't seem to matter all that much.
Cool gang tattoos. Yeah, you too.
Which, if you know gangs, isn't often the case. There was a pride among them, a twisted, decaying pride rooted in dominion and fear. Aristocratic vanity and vicious rivalry spread like disease within the ranks, often erupting in blade-drawn conflict. Yet they wore their titles like armor and named themselves as lords over shadows. Their origins clung to them. Gang codes became command structure. Honorifics were claimed like territory. Every warrior bore a name, a mark, a history carved in scars or stitched into flayed skin. Their weapons were cruel works of art. Their armor, gleaming in bone and blood, was a canvas of suffering. Where the white scars raced and the world eaters roared, the Night Lords carved warnings in flesh. Mutilated corpses were nailed to walls, their screams echoing long after death. Flayed skin hung from vehicles like torn banners. These were not savage impulses, but deliberate, methodical acts. At first it was calculated, a message etched in agony. This is your future. This is what we bring.
One of the craziest pieces of art. I've been trying since we started this episode to find it, but I can't find it. But it's a Night Lord, and he's basically wearing 50 people. On his shoulder pads, he's got like 7 arms, like just hanging down. Like normally they have those leather straps on their shoulder pads as kind of like extra armor. Like think those Roman straps, but it was arms, man. It was all arms. It was fucking crazy. But yeah.
They get pretty sadistic with their aesthetic and attire.
Yeah, you're just looking at them and they got hands stapled to them. Like yikes.
Jordan, it is a beautiful culture.
I'm very accepting and very tolerant of this beautiful culture.
The Night Lords heresy models, I forget what special unit they're called on the tabletop. But if you look closely at them too, they're wearing human flesh over their arms. Like they've gloved flesh on their arms.
Yikes.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even notice that until much later.
Not good.
All right, let's get into their gene semen.
Jordan.
The gene seed of the Night Lords is a cruel paradox, uncorrupted yet damned. It remains remarkably pure, bearing little of the mutation that plagues other traitor legions. Before their fall, the only visible aberrations were their corpse-pale skin and eyes black as voidstone, features that only deepen after mingling with the blood of Nostramo's hollowed-eye populace. Even in damnation, their gene seed resists the warp's touch. Among all the heretic Astartes, the Night Lords show the least sign of physical mutation. Some whisper that this is due to their inherent stability of their genetic stock. Others suspect it is because the Night Lords seldom kneel to any one god, drifting instead like a carrion of birds, untouched by devotion, but steeped in blasphemy. But it is not their flesh that bears the Primarch's mark. It is their mind, the true inheritance of Konrad Curze. His madness, paranoia festers in their thoughts, blooming into fratricide and despair. They wage war not to win, but to unmake. They sow terror, not for victory, but for the ecstasy of watching hope rot. Within their ranks, the Night Lord's sorcery carry a deeper curse. It is said they suffer seizures torn from the warp's cruel embrace, visions that claw through their minds with burning talons. Their screams echo the madness of their gene sire. For, like the Night Haunter, they see only ruin in the threads of fate, prophecies soaked in blood and despair. Curze saw the worst of all possible futures and could not turn away. His doom became a beacon for his sons. Now it is whispered that his sorcerers share that burden, twisting in torment as the future peels itself open before their eyes, always ending in death, always echoing their father's terrible curse. There is no proof, only screams in the dark. But the shadows of Nostramo are long. The past has a habit of bleeding forward.
Ooh, yeah, it'd be a fun thought to think about the curse the Night Lords got when Konrad died. Like when Sanguinius died, all the Blood Angels were affected. So when Curze died, did they all now get this like psychic ability where they all now see their own death and all that kind of fun stuff?
Or if they didn't, does it confirm that he's still alive?
Or that, dun dun dun. Jump to their homeworld, the planet of Nostramo. Nostramo was a world steeped in darkness, both literal and moral. The planet's crust was so dense and rich with minerals that natural light scarcely reached its surface, casting its cities into a permanent gloom. Artificial illumination, weak and flickering, offered little comfort to its inhabitants. Life beneath the blackened skies was harsh and short. Crime was rampant, violence was a daily ritual, and justice was a forgotten word. The ruling elite, corrupt and sadistic, built their wealth upon the backs of the slaves and serfs who toiled in the mines, their suffering muffled by the choking dark. It was a world where hope had long since weathered. In its place, fear had taken root as the natural order. When Curze, later known as the Night Haunter, fell from the stars and walked Nostramo's people, he brought not salvation but reckoning. A solitary figure draped in shadow, he imposed order with uncompromising cruelty, becoming both executioner and judge to a society already drowning in its sin. Criminals were butchered without trials, their bodies left on displays as warnings. The streets fell silent, not from peace but from terror. For a time, Nostramo knew stability, but it was a stability of fear, not redemption. The people looked to their savior and saw a monster, and worse, they came to accept the monster as necessary. But even monsters can break, and the darkness of Nostramo seeped back into Curze's soul, whispering to him that nothing he built could last. When the Legion returned to the planet during the Great Crusade, they found it a little changed, still corrupt, still festering beneath the surface, calm. Eventually, overwhelmed by prophetic visions, the betrayal he foresaw from his own blood, Curze turned his wrath upon the world he once tried to save. With a single command, he ordered the Night Lord's fleet to fire upon Nostramo from orbit. The planet cracked and died beneath the bombardment, reduced it to burning fragments in the void. It was an act of despair as much as judgment, the death of a world and the final proof that the Night Lords had been born not to bring justice but vengeance without end. After reading that, it's actually coming to me that this actually happened right before the Horus Heresy. So, they were going hard before the heresy.
Yeah, they're was it already very evident that they had turned to chaos before the Horus Heresy, or?
Well, this incident was okay, so they left on the Great Crusade, and then the planet went back to its old ways. So when they came back, it was fuck, it's all criminals again. So that pissed the Night Lord off.
So it was more like divine justice. They were, exactly,
yeah. I'm not doing this again. The remnants of the fall is a little piece of the planet. Seems like we always get pieces of planets that survive, though, or something similar to it. So
Nothing
Right.
ever truly dies.
no, you'll live forever, Jordan.
In eternal conscious torment, yes.
God.
All right, let's get into it. Not all of Nostramo was lost to the fire. A world's mass cannot simply vanish, no matter how violently it is unmade. From the shattered bones of their homeworld, the 8th Legion clung to what remained. Chief among these fragments was Tenebror, Nostramo's solitary moon, a fortress in the dark, untouched by the cataclysmic wrath of the doomed Primarch. Like their brother legions, the Night Lords had claimed dominion over the void surrounding their world. Tenebror had once been a sentinel, a bastion raised to guard the planet it orbited. At its zenith, it was a fortress worthy of legends, capable of housing half the Legion's fleet, its guns rivaled by few save the fabled phalanx. It was more than a station, it was a grim crown of a dead world. After the galaxy tore itself apart in the Horus Heresy, the Imperium turned its vengeful eye towards the traitor remnants. In 017 M31, Tenebror was designated a threat to be erased. When the Sons of Sanguinius entered the system during the Great Scouring, they did not find warriors but ruin. The fortress moon was hollowed by time and neglect. Its vast guns were silent, its chambers filled with decay. The meager garrison, Legion serfs, forgotten and starved of purpose, had long since lost the means to repair what was broken. No Night Lords greeted the Loyalists, only echoes. The truth came later, pieced together from the blood and ash. The 8th Legion had already been cast out, not by the Imperium, but by their own kind. In 011 M31, the Ashen Claws, a Black Shield warband, had come in fury and silence, erasing their former kin in a purge no one witnessed. By the time the Imperium arrived, it was already too late. Nostramo was gone. Its moon lingered like a tombstone in the void, forgotten save for the memories that bled through the walls. Memories of a legion that had once called it home, and a curse that even death could not silence.
That's so funny. It wasn't enough that they had to destroy their own planet. They had to go back and fuck it all up again. What was left? Yeah, they really are just brutal, and all they do is destroy. There's a lot of traitorous legions where we could find like moments of redemption in their stories, or like little flickers of hope, but not with these guys. Even their own people like cast them down. Even their own Astartes, there's rebellion in it, and just driven by madness.
Now let's get into the combat doctrine. The Night Lords have wholly embraced the dreadful legacy of their Primarch, spreading horror and despair like a plague. They extinguish the communications of doomed worlds, replacing them with maddened shrieks and blasphemous whispers. While they butcher the populace in a drawn-out symphony of suffering. Excuse me. Rarely do they face those who might resist them. They hunt the helpless, reveling in terror. When the broken offer surrender, they are met not with mercy, but with dismemberment. Their dying howls echoing into darkness. In the eyes of the Night Lord, pity died with their humanity. There is no creed, no divine cause that drives the Night Lords to ruin the worlds they touch. Only the cold inertia of cruelty. The honor of war has long since rotted from their legion, leaving behind only fractured warbands who kill without purpose, but with great delight. Shadows are their domain. The Night Lords move with unnatural silence, slithering into place before the massacre begins. This art, woven into their very souls, is wielded in twisted games of psychological torment designed to break even the strongest minds. When their grim preparations are complete, they descend with sickening force. Their attacks are not battles, but executions, explosions of violence crafted to shatter morale and sow despair, thinning the ranks with horrifying precision. A favored method of torment involves a vox-amplified scream, 15 seconds of agony that ruptures eardrums and shatters nerves. Deafened, crippled, and afraid, the victims are then slaughtered. blind to the shadows that birthed their deaths.
I know one of the coolest fucking battle cries is the Night Lords, and it'd be a shame to not really just say it again. I've said it once, but Ave Dominus Nox. It's, that high Gothic. It sounds sweet. I forget what it means, but I don't think it means blessings from your saviors,
It means hail, Lord of the Night.
Yeah, okay, cool. Fucking all right. Yeah, cool battle cry. I forgot it, and then I went back and shit, I didn't really say battle cries for any of the legions because none of them really had anything as but cool name.
Even before their fall, the Night Lords wore death itself as a mantle. Skulls, bones, and torn flesh adorned their ceramite, a grotesque armor, forged to weaponize fear. Against the weak, their grotesque champions descend, wielding bolters and blades with pitiless resolve. Since the long war began, their ranks have swelled with raptors, twisted echoes of their Primarch's doctrine. These airborne predators scream from the heavens like the damned, tearing into flesh and spirit alike, breaking the courage of hardened warriors in moments of visceral horror.
Fun. You just really want to go camping with these guys, or just really any one-on-one time you can find with these guys. I think it's going to be a really neat experience.
I definitely leave my kids alone around them for sure.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think great babysitters. Children need discipline and structure, for sure.
To be fair, they would also wreak absolute vengeance on anyone that ever tried to hurt your kids too. So,
But that
50-50.
including me though. Shit. Martial traditions. The Night Lords are unique among the Traitor Legions in that they do not possess formal martial traditions such as honor duels, warrior codes, or ceremonial challenges. Unlike the Imperial Fists, who prize stoic discipline, or the White Scars, who revere the ritual of the hunt, the Night Lords care nothing for structured combat or personal glory. Their methods are designed not for fairness or recognition, but for maximum psychological and physical devastation. What remains of their so-called traditions is steeped in fear and brutality. Within their warbands, challenges from leaders or disputes are settled not through honor duels, but through assassination, treachery, and raw violence. Duels do occur, but they are rarely fair, often ending in backstabbing or overwhelming force. There is no shame in deceit, only shame in weakness. The only measure of worth is the ability to dominate, to terrorize, and to survive. This brutal ethos is not new, but a dark echo of their origins on Nostramo, where law was enforced through fear and punishment rather than justice. The Legion inherited this grim legacy from the Primarch, who believed terror to be the most effective form of control. Over time, any remnants of martial honor eroded completely, leaving behind a brotherhood of murderers whose only honor as a brotherhood of murderers who see honor as a lie and tradition as a weakness to be exploited. Yeah, that's another fun thing about them. They, lots of the other 40k things almost seem goofy. We got all these Space Marines in power armor wearing robes and doing rituals with candles and stuff, and it almost seems just comical, really. But yeah, these guys if they are comical in any ways, they almost lean towards a comical villain, and how just nefarious and bad, and how they always just want to do bad things in their dastardly plan.
They really like their dark humor.
Yeah. But yeah, not much for their honor duels and all that kind of stuff. Not much for their rituals and ceremonies.
That is cool too, because it also speaks to their culture, being recruited from prisons and the streets. It does make sense that they're not super pompous about things. Respect is earned, not they have less respect for a rank just because you say it. You have to kind of earn it, kind of like street cred kind of thing. So makes sense. They also obviously have a vampire theme going through them as well, as do the Blood Angels and many other species that we constantly come back to. But
they do carry some names forward though. They give themselves a name when they join the Legion type thing, or throughout it.
Yeah, let's get into some of them. Night Lords' names are generally derived from those used by the people of ancient Nostramo, though they also sometimes include a name derived from a physical feature, personality quirk, past deed, or other defining feature. Examples of Night Lord names include Karos Reeve, Dracos Nightblade, Miros Balakor, Jago Cade, Ravkos Soul Eater. I wonder what he did to earn that name. Otho Nosferus, Kel Tarask, Garrus Cavatar, Tovak the Agonizer, Nerevesh Mercy Giver. That's funny.
Maybe ironic name.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
is where they're going with that one.
Come on, just let me break his neck. Come on.
It'll be quick. It'll be quick.
It'll be quick.
Malithos of the Midnight Claw. So there's a very, like, they all carry very strong, sharp sounding names. I don't know how to describe that, but
Fuzz says their name like people you don't want to play D&D with. Yeah. Not a Night Lord name. Christian the Worst is not a Night Lord name. That's a name of the Liber Malleus.
yeah, there you go. And soon to be your ruler in chaos. So get used to it. Yeah, they do have cool names though. I do like their names. They're obviously very brutal sounding names.
Very Klingon sounding.
Yeah, right. Like they're very like hard edged. I don't know how to describe linguistics, but like the R's and the T's and the V's and the hard K's.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into their organization. The rot of Nostramo pulsed like a dying heart within the Night Lord's Legion. Though outwardly shaped in the semblance of their brother legions during the Great Crusade, beneath that brittle facade festered the dark legacy of a world drowned in shadow. Its blood-soaked courts, its pitiless gang codes, and the worship of fear woven into every sinew of the Eighth. Their squads bore many configurations, but breacher siege units, symbolic of defense and unity, were strangely scarce, as if the legions instinctively shunned the idea of shielding anything. More distinctive were their horrors, the dreaded terror squads, reapers of sanity, whose art was torment, and the shrieking night raptors, who rained entrails from above, while their distorted voxcaster cried like lost souls. No unit bore a number alone. Each was named, revered, or feared, like a scar. Claws, talons, oaths, fragments of identity marking each pack as both predator and cursed heir. The company formed the Legion's cruel backbone, and each squad bled into a company, numbering from 100 to 1,000 damned souls. These companies bore titles that read like epithets or death sentences. The 27th Shattered Skull, the 104th Sable Brothers, the 71st Crimson Judges, names etched in dread. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of other legions, the Night Lords favored a morbidly flexible structure, layering battalions and chapters like tombstones, semi-permanent, ever shuffling, designed to splinter or converge at the whim of their dark command. What others called chaos, they called strategy, brutal, adaptive, and soaked in blood. Among these was a mournful remnant, the Crimson Sons, born of the Ninth Company's near extermination during the scorched ruin of Occitania. Their fall was total, their sacrifice unremembered. The Emperor, in a gesture both merciful and cruel, spared Occitania's king and made him a rogue traitor, binding the Crimson Sons to his exile. For a time, they bore the ancient marks of the Legion before the coming of Konrad Curze, ghosts of a forgotten heraldry. They fought as wraiths beside rogue traitor Gotha until returning, silent and changed, to the Legion. Afterwards, nothing. Their fate, like so many in the Cursed Eighth, was lost amid the carnage of the Horus Heresy, unburied, unnamed, perhaps unmissed.
Yeah. It is fun how they come up with names not only for those like themselves, but also for their units and stuff. Claws, talons. Yeah, it's all just like aggressive. It's all ways that are gonna hurt you. It's not tactical. It's violent for sure. It's weapon oriented.
I did see that they don't serve any particular chaos god, but It does feel very Khorne, does it not?
Sure, but I think all violence just naturally feels corn and like taking skulls and stuff. Sure. I guess what emotion is being caused when this happened is terror. Does that count as a different emotion that it feeds more than corn? Those are those kind of weird questions we could never really have answers to. Yeah, like I guess you'd have like natural tendencies for each of the legions to fall to one of the gods, and yeah, like the Night Lords aren't going to fall to Chinch. They're not going to fall necessarily to Nurgle either, because they don't care about that same kind of like longevity almost, or like rebirth. Slaanesh, they're definitely not about that. So yeah, Khorne would definitely be the one most suited for him. But
I have some counters to your Chinch and Slaanesh argument.
sure, okay, perfect.
Certainly, I think there could be an element of Night Lords in the conniving and the,
shadow,
dark kind of plotting aspect of them. And then certainly if they take pleasure in terrorizing people, could lead to a path of Slaanesh.
Sure. I get off to their screams. Yeah, that's Slaaneshi.
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's always like, what does any one action, just because I cut off your head, does that mean I serve Khorne? No, not necessarily. So
have at it. Have fun with it.
Do what you want.
We'll dive into their hierarchy. Konrad Curze was a shadow-enthroned king of the 8th Legion, a figure more specter than sire, feared by those who would call him father as much as he was obeyed. Many bent the knee in genuine loyalty, but just as many did with dread curdling in their veins. Others despised him, yet they served him. Love, hate, what did it matter? So long as when he spoke, none disobeyed. Around him gathered his most lethal instruments, the Chiropetra, a cabal of trusted executioners drawn from across the Legion's senior ranks. Their inclusion owed little to the hierarchy of everything to what Curze saw in themselves: ruthlessness, cunning, and refined cruelty. Though their station offered no formal power, none dared defy them. Besides the Chiropetra stood the Atramentar, a company bound in black ceramite and silence, clad in Terminator plate and armed with death. They answered the first captain, and through him to the Primarch alone. They were relentless in battle and merciless in judgment. Many whispers they served as Curze's hidden blade, his executioners within. Beneath the Chiropetra loomed the many captains of the Legion. Those rare few who commanded multiple companies bore inconsistent titles: commanders, masters, regent, more echoes of nostalgia than clarity. But titles mattered little in the 8th. Authority shifted like blood and water. A regent might lord over captains, yet bow in silence if a Chiropetra whispered. Hierarchy in the Night Lords was not built, it was imposed, and only until it was shattered. Just as the squads bore grim names etched into pain, so too did their leaders cloak themselves in title, lifted from Nostramo's notable corpses in its blood-soaked underworld. Talon masters, bloodless, sightless, reverent. Some names were earned in battle, others were curses, taunts, turned masks that refused to come off. By the time of the drop site massacre in 05 M31, the Night Lords had already begun their descent into shadow. For years they drifted from the Imperium's cause, waging their own wars with no sanction, no oversight. They were ghosts on the battlefield, unreported, unmeasured. Their true strength was unknowable. Some spoke of 90,000 warriors, while others 120,000 or more. In the latter days of the Great Crusade, they turned to the stars like hunters, seizing youth from conquered worlds. Whole star systems vanished to the night to swell their ranks. They forged new killers swiftly and brutally through psycho-conditioning and rapid implantation, raising warriors with nightmares still fresh in their minds. As the Istvan burned, many of the 8th were not even present. They had scattered like carrion birds feeding the dark edges of the galaxy, choosing war not out of duty, but desire. Just kind of more on that merit-based hierarchy and really just culture that they have, where, only might is right. Only you have to be able to have the strength to impose your will. Otherwise, who are you? Don't care.
Yeah. Just because you call yourself a Centurion doesn't mean you have the right to lead. All right. Let's get into some of the Legion's special units. The Atramentar, cloaked in the suffocating black of the Tartaros pattern Terminator armor, the Atramentar were the shadowed hammer of the Night Lord's feared First Company. Led by the infamous first captain Jago Savatarion, these warriors were death made flesh, carriers of cold wrath and exquisite cruelty, wielding the Legion's deadliest weapons with merciless precision. Yet beneath their armored fury lay fractured souls, as frictious as the tempestuous as the Legion itself. Only the iron will of commanders like Savatarion could tame such storms of rebellion, forging them into shock troops whose savagery tore through enemies with terrifying crescendo. But when Savatarion fell at the Siege of Terra, leadership passed to the Terran-born Sao Sahal, and like the Legion's own fractured spirit, the Atramentar splintered, dispersed among warbands, becoming the personal executioners and bodyguards of Night Lord Chaos Lords, forever lost to the whispers of their former unity.
You can definitely go buy these models too and find cool pictures of them. They look so good.
Yeah.
Which of the three Terminator armors do you kind of like? Tartarus, Cataphracti, or Indominus?
I do like the Indominus just because of the classic bulldog face. You can't get over it. But Tartarus are pretty close second for me personally.
Yeah, that sleek almost looks like Maximus armor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Maximus is probably my favorite old power armor, so definitely fit. You didn't mention what's the new power armor coming out? Well, not new, but like the oldest.
The Saturnine.
Yeah, Saturnine. You don't like Saturnine? You didn't even listen.
I feel like that should be recategorized, not as Terminator armor though, and we'll see what they do with it when it comes out.
Yeah, it's borderline like a mini
mech.
Warsuit. Yeah, like a
warsuits. That's a better word for it. Yeah,
dreadnought, almost like a mini dreadnought, somewhere between Terminator and dreadnought. Because
Yeah,
we need more of those. Anyways, I digress.
The Imperium has many enemies, and we need one suit of armor to battle each type.
Each size, yes, all the way up to the Grey Knight walking baby carrier.
Okay, let's get into the Kontakar Elite. They were the Legion's nightmare incarnate, Terminator-clad harbingers of utter despair and ruin, renowned for sowing terror during the Great Crusade. They were butchers elevated to aristocracy, taken from Nostramo's decaying nobility, blood tainted by corruption and disdain for the Imperium's subjects. Their loyalty was a blade edge reserved for only those leaders they deemed worthy or shared their vile heritage. Coldly calculating, the Kontakar were dispatched to wrest command from lesser Night Lords, enforcing brutal discipline through ruthless purges. Commanded only by Curze or Savatarion, these killers hungered for power, ever ready to strike down rivals who dared show weakness. They were as much predators within the Legion as without, each kill sharpening their claws for the endless bloodletting of their fractured brotherhood.
Yeah, just every one of these ranks is like an enforcer one where it's like, you guys are supposed to kill people outside of your Legion, right? But, that's how they do it in the Night Lords. The Terror Squad. In the darkest shadows of the 8th Legion, terror squads roamed as instruments of personalized torment and retribution. These squads were the Legion's torturers and hunters of heads, masters of flaying flesh and extinguishing souls with cold, deliberate malice. Once a calculated tool of war, over time the terror squads became a refugee for the unstabled and damned, those under death sentences kept alive only by their utility to the cruel masters. Among them lurked cold-hearted killers and deranged maniacs alike, bound together by their shared descent into madness and violence, turning the act of murder into a macabre performance of suffering. Just a bunch of edgelords trying to one-up each other. Gets pretty fucking graphic in those types of places for sure.
Yeah.
Nothing good comes.
Yeah, it definitely is where people who, once that moral compass is shattered, like, this is where the worst are going. Next up, we got the Night Raptors. The Night Raptors were the Legion's living terror from above, a bloodthirsty cabal bound not by rank, but by savage inclination and lust for brutal warfare. Equipped with jump packs and deadly close combat weapons, they struck as overwhelming predators, cleaving through flesh and butcher's ferocity and relish. Where others wielded subtlety and strategy, the raptors embraced unrestrained slaughter, their screaming descent heralding death itself. They hunted with a grim joy that was as haunting as it was merciless. The moment a victim glimpsed the abyss in the killer's eyes before the end. In many ways, these avian predators foreshadowed the chaos raptors that would stalk the traitor legions long after the heresy's bloody end.
Kind of that iconic unit that they have.
Jump
Just-
packs.
It makes sense, they just are hanging around and they just love jumping down at you and going, boo! Scared you, bitch! And then they do that in front of your friends too, so then all your friends know that you jumped and screamed like a little girl, and it sucks.
And then they have to punch you. But, if
Yeah.
the Space Marine punches you, it just shatters your bones. I just love the idea of stealth jump packs. Like giant jet engines of stealth. Raven Guard have the same problem too. They're all about stealth, and then they specialize in jump pack units, and it's just like, okay.
They're used for getting away. They jump off that building, land, and use the corpses as like a
Cushioning.
mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the jump pack is to get away once they've been discovered.
And they laugh into the night like little.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, shall we get into our final section here, the war gear. Terror and psychological warfare tools. The Night Lords prize weapons and devices designed not just for killing, but for sowing terror, panic, and despair. This includes specialized units that create gruesome effects or horrifying sounds, such as lightning claws. Lethal close combat weapons that shred flesh and armor with brutal efficiency, perfectly suited for sudden savage strikes. Shock grenades and phosphor grenades, used to disorient and terrify enemies with blinding light and searing fire. Tartaros pattern Terminator armor, favored by elite units like the Atramentar and Kontakar. This Terminator armor offers superior protection while maintaining the intimidating silhouette the Night Lords cultivate. The armor is often painted in their signature midnight blues and blacks, adorned with lightning motifs and skulls to inspire dread. Chainswords and Volkite weapon. A chainsword, often bloodied and jagged, is a brutal weapon for the Night Lord's close quarters savagery. Volkite culverins and carbines provide devastating ranged firepower, capable of reducing foes to burning ash. These weapons serve both practical and symbolic roles, embodying the Legion's merciless incendiary tactics. Nostramo chainglaive. The Nostramo chainglaive was a type of chain weapon used by the heretic Astartes of the Night Lords Legion that resembled the great pole arm, with a chainsword blade at its tip, crafted in the Nostraman style. Jump pack. The Night Raptors and other assault units favor jump packs to close the distance with terrifying speed, delivering swift and bloody attacks. The ability to strike from above the sudden violence is essential to their style of warfare. Stealth and mobility gear. Although not as stealth-oriented as some other legions, Night Lords favor gear that allows rapid, terrifying strikes and quick withdrawals, often incorporating camo cloaks or darkened armor, finishes that blend into shadowy environment.
Someone needs to tell the Night Lords that wearing people's flesh is not stealthy either. Between the jump packs and just...
You can also
I guess maybe
smell
though,
them
if it's a
coming.
black person and you run around in the night, maybe that's camo. But it's just, come on, it gets crazy quick. Is all I'm saying. Yeah,
in like a zombie apocalypse, it might be camo. You could hide among the zombies.
Yeah.
Smell
We are
really bad.
basically ready for your purge. I just seen your message there. Yeah, that was the Night Lords episode. We got through the notes here. That's them in 30K. Of all the legions from start to finish, they probably remain pretty consistent. They start off evil criminal killers, and they pretty much end up that way too. So good for them. Moral consistency. That's what we need.
Well, it's hard for thee to kick against the pricks, I suppose.
Yeah. We're gonna get Purge into the stage here, and yeah. Hey, welcome.
Hey boys, it's been a while.
What's good?
Life. Life is good.
Just enjoyed listening to your favorite bearded Canadians talk about flaying people.
Well, about my favorite chapters, so yeah.
What do you like about them? Like, tell me the appeal. I want to know. I want to understand.
For me, I was part of a Black Ops unit, so I kind of know what it's like to be arguably one of the bad guys.
Flaying.
We'll just leave it at that.
Well, don't admit it.
Like I said, I just know what it's like to be one of the bad guys.
Okay. So do you like the taste of human, or is...
I mean,
It's a little salty.
I was gonna say, older civilizations actually would consume flesh of the enemies they defeated because they thought they could get the power of their enemy by eating that flesh.
Yeah, some cultures also would do the same with semen, and it's just some people are idiots. You know?
I won't disagree.
There's better ways to get protein.
I won't disagree, but I'm just saying that it's not that far-fetched of an idea of having cannibalistic people.
For sure.
Yeah, there's actually like a lot of rituals just on that point of cannibalism. I've actually read a little bit about this, and you're absolutely correct. There is a lot of ancient societies that practice. There are some that still practice some form of cannibalism, but
I mean, you could say consuming a wafer at church is mock cannibalism because you're consuming the flesh of Christ.
Sure. Well, I was gonna say, there's a word for it. There's like this word they use in academia for it. I can't remember, but it's when you transition. No, not transition. That's a theological word. It's something else. But it's like when you transition from cannibalism into like ritual, that sort of resembles or is symbolic of the cannibalism, but actually isn't the cannibalism itself. As well as like it's called sublimation. That's what it's called, sublimating. So they've observed that like many societies have sublimated over time, and they go from literally eating people to like some sort of ritual or symbol where it is symbolic of eating a person. And yes, not totally unlike taking of the Eucharist in Christian traditions, but yeah, it's sort of an interesting process that a lot of cultures go through.
So yeah, it's not cannibalism. It's okay. People do it every Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
On the note too of Space Marines eating people, they are actually they have the thing that does allow them to gain knowledge from eating their enemies as well. So it's maybe not encouraged, but definitely something they can do with benefits. But sorry, go ahead.
Night Lords do it on Saturdays, so that way they can still be chaos.
They do it for the taste.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want Konrad to come back, but you were mentioning what happens if he didn't die. I think an interesting thought experiment, if you want to put it that way, would be one of his split personalities died, and then he ended up becoming in charge of the Legion of the Damned. And then that's how they always know when to be at the right spot, because they're using his precognition.
I don't like the tie-in with the Legion of the Damned. I do almost like hunting down this multiple personality concept for sure, where like I think I kind of even mentioned seems like when he puts on his suit of armor he becomes the Night Hunter, and he's way more willing to do evil twisted things, where outside of it he's almost like more broken withered husk of himself, more depressive and contemplative. So
but either way, like I said, yeah, if you wanted to bring him back, you could still have him technically killed. It's just one of his split personalities was killed and not him outright.
Konrad Curze died, but the Night Hunter lives.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Or vice versa. Yeah, I do actually. I'm okay with that idea, honestly. I don't know if this came up when you guys talked about the Batman connections with Night Hunter, but with the whole split personality conversation, there's an episode of Justice League where I think they're reading people's minds and to determine like all these different superhero secret identities. But Batman, when they read Batman's mind, he thinks of himself as Batman, and Bruce Wayne is actually his alter ego. So
that's cool.
Fun fact.
Actually, when we were going into Konrad, I was thinking more of MK Ultra, because a lot of that was they would give people LSD to make them have like bad trips, and then they keep on being like, "Are you ready to kill someone yet? Are you ready to kill someone yet? Are you ready to kill someone yet?" When you finally like, "Yeah, I'll kill someone," they're like, "All right, we got you." And then because of the psychic
Gotcha.
trauma, it usually made someone develop a second split personality. So I kind of pushed when we were talking about Conrad before, that the Emperor was the one that was feeding him these visions to pretty much turn him into this twisted individual.
Like a
Yikes.
40k MK
Yep.
Ultra. Have you ever read the book Chaos by Tom
That I
O'Neill?
haven't.
You should definitely read that. It's just a little aside. You guys can fact check me on this on your own time. Charles Manson was absolutely 1000% involved in MK Ultra, and I'm just gonna leave it at.
I actually watched a couple interviews with him though, and yeah, I know what you're talking about. So
Yeah,
that's where I kind of.
Crazy
but
stuff.
yeah, he was a psychotic
Yep.
killer. So yeah, going into the Konrad Curze at Curze, sorry, and the Night Lords, it's like, hey, you might be onto something there. You might be
Well,
onto
especially
something.
with the visions, because it's like, okay, so how is he getting these visions? And if the emperors, are all powerful, wouldn't he be able to manipulate these visions and ensure that Conrad's having the worst visions possible?
Yeah.
He definitely isn't all powerful, but definitely, we do know he can speak telepathically, and why not through vision?
So
I think that one goes a little too far into like why? Okay, why did the Emperor do this? Like now we're opening this whole big can of worms. Where I think the easier thought is when it was flung through the warp, his pod was breached, and now he's like been warp contaminated since birth, essentially pre-birth.
But it was Conrad that informed everyone that the Emperor was still alive on Terra and that they went back to actually save the Emperor on Terra. If Conrad never actually gave him that information, the Emperor would have been killed.
And that was for the Imperium Secundus and whatever, and the Ruin Storm and all that
Yep.
kind of. Okay. Yeah, sure, but sure.
It's far-fetched.
That's a very easy thing to. Sure, yeah. It's a very easy thing for authors to write that kind of thing in that one line to make it all kind of fit, but it just seems like, why would the Emperor make a psychopath? Like, that just seems like, and then he also hates him the whole time too, and is like really not a fan of him. So he creates this fucking useless thing just so he can turn around and then save himself. Yeah, it's a lot. Arkham's Razum says no, thank you.
Yeah, no, I get you. Like I said, it's far-fetched, but that's what I tend to do with a lot of the stuff you guys put out there, is just think a little bit outside of the box. It's like, well,
yeah,
what's a tangent we're not thinking of, and how can that be
well,
applied?
if he was my dad.
Yeah. In terms of the Night Lords themselves, I think I see them more as like a feral creature, especially when you look at the original ones were taken out of Terra, out of like the prison sinks. So like they were feral. It wasn't like they were upstanding citizens or anything like that. Like they were brought from the worst of the worst, and then they're domesticated, for lack of term, to become these space marines. And as soon as they're domesticated, they're let loose back on the world. So to me, like, they're feral predators. They're not humans. And to like try to apply like a human concept of understanding between like what their objective is or their morality, it doesn't make sense. Like you can't apply morality to a pack of feral dogs that attack people.
Sure. Yeah, and they get to that spot where that's all they do is they just like they smell blood and they attack.
Yep.
They are fun in that way where like they are just straight up bad. You don't need to think of fun reasons necessarily of why we need to capture some ancient relic so we can upset the balance of power in the universe. No. They just want to go around and cause fucking havoc, and that's fun.
And then that's like, is that because what the Emperor wanted them to be, or did they divulge into that? And like looking at the beginnings, like the Emperor already took these feral people. Like he should have known what the outcome was going to be if he took a bunch of feral children and gave them superpowers.
Yeah, it seems pretty obvious to not do penal legions, but hey, yeah, that's the weird thing. Like, we didn't always have those little tiebacks of like how far back the Legion went and where they recruited from, and some of them are interesting, and some of them kind of like just open up. Well, what the fuck? Seriously, they were recruiting from prisoners on Terra, and Nostramo's a prison planet. Like, what's happening?
Right, and it's like the Emperor may not be all knowing, but he's not going to do something on accident. Like he's got a purpose for everything he does.
He must. Otherwise, it's all just fucking bonkers.
I mean, it is
Really.
bonkers. It's just his predetermined bonkers. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is everyone was talking about what chaos god they would serve. If the Emperor became a chaos god, I could see them being his go-to legion.
If the Emperor became a chaos god, the Night Lords would
Really?
become his. Tell me
I
more.
don't know if I agree. Yeah, explain.
One, because the Emperor represents order, and two, not of its own choosing, but he inspires hope across the universe. So what would be the opposite aspects of that? Well, if you take away hope, you got fear and terror and chaos. And what are the Night Lords known for? Well, fear, terror, and chaos.
So the Emperor becomes a warp god, and then he becomes bad. Is the concept, and then
Right. Like if he became a
Yeah,
true
yeah.
chaos god, not necessarily like he becomes a warp god and becomes good. I'm saying if he became one of the fourth
Yeah.
chaos god, like what would be his main traits? And it would have to be inverted of what he represents now. And like I said, to me, the inversion of what the Emperor would represent.
Why does it have to be inverted, though?
I guess it doesn't have to be inverted. It's just that's what makes sense to me is if he's going to become a chaos god and he's no longer the god of humanity, because at this point he kind of is a god of humanity, even if it's against his choosing. Like there's people that worship and pray to him and ask him for miracles and
Yeah.
stuff. So to me, it's like, okay, so what would be the inversion of that? Kind of like, you got the God and the devil. Like the devil's supposed to be the inversion of God. So then what would be the inversion of the emperor? What would be his devilish traits?
Yeah. Well, that's where I think you're misunderstanding what the warp is. So it's not an inversion; it is a parallel dimension. And parallel means it's running right alongside of it. When you go in it, you don't become the opposite of yourself. The reflection of yourself is not the opposite. It's parallel. So, maybe ultimately, maybe the Emperor brings terror to all the Xenos, and that's ultimately the main feeling he brings into the galaxy.
And then
The whole galaxy is like, well, the Emperor steps on the scene and this all is fucked. But yeah. That's a crazy one. You're really pushing my mind on that one. If I'm being honest.
Well, that's what I'm here for. And then lastly, that's like I said, because I like the Night Lords a lot, I actually made my homebrew chapter out of the Night Lords.
Nice. What's your homebrew chapter called?
Oh, I'd have to look it up because I haven't even touched the lore in so long.
The Day Kings is what they're called.
The Day Kings. Or the opposites, the Day Queens, but that's a different army. I'm sure of it. It has to be.
That's a Slaneshi army, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Dayman and Nightman from Always Sunny.
Yeah. Any other thoughts there, Purge? And he's gone. Yeah.
I wanted to hear more about his army.
Now, and he's booted. You only get so long with us before we grow impatient and we close out the show. The Night Lords are fun. They're interesting. I feel like they're one of the legions that most people know very little about, or what we do know about them, it's like it's so surface level, but ultimately the surface is pretty skin deep with the Night Lords. They're just baddies. They want to commit violence.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think they're the purest embodiment of chaos. Ironically enough, they don't necessarily serve chaos like the other ones, but isn't that the point of chaos? Lack of a hierarchy, lack of order. That to me just screams Night Lords.
Yeah, they make a good contestant for following Chaos Unbound, where it's not undivided. They're doing it for themselves. They're using the power of the warp for their own ambitions and their own power, and they definitely make good contestants for that. The only reason why I don't really hold them as the true Unbound followers is they're not spiritual almost. Maybe that's not quite the right way to do it. I don't think they engage enough with the warp. It's like, yeah, they'll use it, but I don't think that's like their goal. Like they're pretty solo.
Yeah, when I say chaos, I mean the concept of anarchy. Like
sure.
True chaos, not warp magic. They also have the strong bat theme, which I know is something near and dear to your heart with the Unbound. So
yeah.
Just to throw that out
they
there.
fit nicely. Well,
Oh, hold on. In the chat there, Purge says his warband is called the Ghoul Knights, which is really sick. Actually, I love that.
Yeah,
And very
that's
fitting
cool.
for a Night Lord spinoff.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to do a I'll have to do a listener lore on it. Send it in. Cool. Well, let's end this episode here. We got one more Night Lord episode. We got 10,000 years of how they degrade even further. So join us on the next episode. But yeah, we'll do end show. If you want to buy some Night Lords, you can go to Merlin's Miniatures and use promo code Lorehammer, or use the link in the description below. You can go buy your minis there. You know, you support our show, and you want those minis, so why the fuck not? Get after it.
And you can also listen to the Star Lords podcast with me and Christian. We explore the intricacies and in-depth analysis of the Star Wars universe. The best Star Wars podcast on the HoloNet. Go check it out today.
Nice. Cool. Well, everyone, we'll see you all on the next episode.